samyuktam nityam dhyayanti yoginaha kamadam mokshadam chaiva om karaya namo namaha. Om Namah Shivaya Gurave Sachidananda Murtaye Nisprapanchaya Shantaya Niralambaya Tejase. Om. Om. Welcome to Satsang. So, how shall we begin?
Coming back from GEV, I sort of had a hard landing back to, normal life, kind of work and I guess the profane in contrast to the sacred sort of few weeks that we had, in the presence of saints, singing magical, beautiful songs. I've been contemplating the concept of karma yoga in a good amount of depth and trying to read and learn everything I can about, the idea of one's service in the world. And I think the reason why is because, I would imagine it's probably not unfamiliar to people that when one is fully devoted to the spiritual path, at least for me, there arises this conflict between like the sacred, which is, my meditation time and, all of the spiritual activities that I'm doing, and then kind of the rest of it, the time that I'm sort of at work and doing things that are on the surface of it, kind of, not a sort of explicitly spiritual endeavor. One of the lessons that seems to be arising, from at least from the the teachers that I'm reading, and I've revisited some of the Bhagavad Gita verses around sort of work incessantly, but don't be attached to the result, and these types of concepts. One of the things that definitely feels true is that a part of the spiritual path is the recontextualization of everything, and so actually that conflict that initially arose in some ways seems like a sort of mind duality, and actually, one of the things the thing that I've been practicing is, during the course of work during the day, devoting that to God, like devoting my activities to God, and trying to bring that presence of love and awareness that comes so easily during a meditation to, in the midst of a stressful kind of work environment. I guess the sort of the kind of the conflict, maybe not a conflict, but the sort of paradox in my mind is between like whether the karma yoga and the service that one is, that is the surrender of one's will to God, is more around the devotion of everything that one does and the way that one is in the world to God, or it's about the content of the actual thing that you're doing. As in, like, I guess what I'm the sort of conflict for me is like, do I give up my job and go and become a sadhu, and what about money? um and survival, and am I just not trusting God? Is that an ego thing? You know, I'm seeing sort of nods and laughter. Like to me, this feels very present. It's a real conflict in uh, or apparent conflict right now. I feel that there's a way through, but it would be good to get, yeah, any reflections on it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Very good. Well, as you see, that the Sangha resonates. Raise your hand if you resonate with what Johnny's saying. Yes. So many things can be said. You know, even just this one practice of karma yoga, there's so many angles of reflection on it. The thing that comes most prominently when you were exploring is that the seed of practice is the same as the fruit of practice. The conditioned ego, the great majority of its inspiration comes from fear and desire. And this desire is fear, and this fear is desire. They're the same. But this is the movement, this is the inspiration, the motivation. And so the seed of practice is something called karma yoga, or selfless service, or just service to community, to humanity, to other. Selfless. And in this as practice, it will reveal the friction that you'll find in yourself. It will reveal your selfishness. And this is good. Maybe not so pleasant. Awareness isn't always a party, you know. But it will reveal your habits to you, and you'll see how difficult it is to actually be selfless in service. It means to not have any personal or vain motivation in it at all. Not just to not have an expectation of the outcome, but to simply do as a practice and for the joy of doing. And then also to relinquish any sense of the ends, the fruit of your practice. Any expectation, any reward or compensation, any attaboy or attagirl, any expectation of this comes from the very fear-driven ego that you are endeavoring to gently become free of. And so the practice reveals the habits of mind and speech and action that are the very thing that you are endeavoring in your spiritual practice to be free of. Then, in success, action is no longer driven by fear, it's driven by love. That when one realizes in service, the only thing left to do is serve. You wouldn't be so much called to anything else. Everything else becomes kind of mundane. But the mundane in service from this place of love and joy is no longer mundane either. Did I go too quickly there? So the fruit, the spiritual fruit of service is that all that's left to do is serve. And when you see, out of love and joy and humility, all that is inspired is selfless service, vain seeking will fall away. And of its own accord, simply by engaging as sincerely as we can in selfless service, the self will be revealed, and the self that is selfish will fall away. When you are that love, expressing itself by how you speak and what you do, that love and peace is expressing itself through, maybe we could say, what you used to call you as now the instrument of this. And this one now perceives the mundane as sacred. And not to be clever, but also the sacred as mundane. It was always this way. The distinction becomes, it's not that it's not apparent, it's just, it won't be such a menace to you. So, in the meantime, I share this because I think it's helpful to know that this is what remains when the rest of the falsities fall away. When selfishness dissolves, selflessness is all that remains. All the old habits of self-promotion, defense, the strategies of pretending, fight, flight, freeze, gone. And then what remains is selfless, but still here, very much here, just as here as you've ever been, but now completely present and aware in it. Anyway, so there is a time when the distinction between sacred and mundane is important, and we should respect it. We can aspire to engage with the mundane from the place of the heart, which just has a way of making things more sacred of its own accord. And there can be a practice that, when you're chopping vegetables, you're preparing prasad for God. When you're cleaning even your own house as a service to keeping a residence as sacred as a temple. And everything we do can have a different inspiration to it. And when we endeavor to do this, we get better at it. You could say, gosh, I don't like how that sounds, but that's just how it's coming. And it reveals the you in you that you will be happier without. We honestly don't like serving people, especially when there isn't any reward or even a thank you. This changes, of course. Most of you are probably already in the advanced stages of realizing the fruit of karma yoga, is my guess. And so for a time, it makes sense to be discerning, to not engage in the same way with the mundane that you used to. the kinds of activities, the places you go, and the people you spend time with will change. Some may change with you, maybe. But don't wait too long. And so for a time, we exercise some discernment. And let's just say, what's discerning? What we speak, what we say, very important. What we do, also very important. What we do, where we go, who we spend time with. It's very important. And so this is the discernment, and we begin to remove ourselves from the habits that we might call mundane. A time of withdrawal, of discernment. And then there will come a time, probably longer than you would wish, that everything is sacred, and all the people that you knew, all the places that you used to go, all of it is imbued with the same divine DNA, let's say. But there's no rush to that. Let it be an honest experience where you don't mind. Nothing to prove in it. Nothing to prove. You see? Johnny, maybe there's something more?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this question is so deep and present. There's probably many satsangs worth of questions here, but I mean that is very helpful. I mean, I guess the sort of the conflict for me is between right now is between there is definitely an ego attachment to, you know, my career and, you know, all this stuff that I've kind of worked to develop over, you know, however many years. You know, there's a sort of there's like a me investment in this. um there's also a kind of I didn't sort of fall into this. It felt like I was drawn towards this path, and it does feel that there's at least a like something to be completed that feels not so egoic. It's a sort of, I guess, a like, you know, the parable of the talents type thing of like a contribution that I can really make in the world. And then there's a sort of, what about money and survival? And, you know, if I go and become a sadhu and I'm no longer the householder, you know, like there's a fear there as well. But I guess the sort of the paradox for me is between like this the egoic attachment to the thing that I'm somewhat entangled with as the career and the sense of I and the me and all of these trappings of, you know, pride around things that I've achieved and status and, you know, that sort of stuff. But then there's also a kind of um I'm still trying to feel into this more, but like it doesn't fully feel right to leave that now. and I'm not entirely sure what that is and why. And so I guess it's like on the spiritual journey, it's sort of um, yeah, just the kind of um, how you can increasingly distinguish and purify the kind of the pure intention that feels like a selfless service of, I'm not burying my talents, and I'm actually giving what I can give in the world, versus the sort of the more fear-based, ego-based, um and for me at least, that feels quite present right now, that sort of tension between those things, and I'm not entirely sure how to navigate that. And I can feel my mind sort of trying to force a decision. It's like, well, you must do X, you know, and I'm sort of trying to just let that sit a bit. But yeah, that's kind of the tension for me. That's probably as much as I can express around it.
And it's well said. Thank you. I knew there was more. May I share from my own personal past about this? There, I began to see karma in action, my karma, but it was so complicated and so hazy, and I knew that in order to see movement, action, karma, I needed to be relatively still. And and at this time, I was fairly well disgusted with the world. I mean, I read the news, I saw how people treat each other, you know. And so I had a rather contemptuous posture toward the world. And recognizing that I was still very much in it and of it. Huh? And I began this practice, kind of spontaneously. I don't even know how it started, but I was living in a tent at an ashram at this time. So I was already... But let me just insert here. I didn't run away from the world. Probably, if anything, I stayed longer than I might have. I did not want to look back and regret that I ran away. And so the world moved me to this ashram, you could say. I was complicit and willing, but it was almost like you say, I was drawn to it and I was pushed into it. And so at this time, I realized that everything that I reached for and everything that I resisted was going to cause me additional karmas, additional suffering. And so I went through this very brief 10-second ritual where I would just say, I want nothing from the world. And I would be rather steady in that. As I was leaving my tent, I'd want no interaction. I'd want nothing from anybody, like this. But also at the same time, I would turn an eye to Divine Mother, and I said, and how will you love me today? So I didn't realize it at the time, but I was in renunciation, but simultaneously willing to receive what came. You see? And I did this for some years, 3 years of rather intense practice, and this was the very beginning of this. As time passed and I became more still, more aware of the play of cause and effect, the world revealed me to myself. What I saw was not always very pleasant, of course. And really this clarified. Finally, I had the ability to articulate it like this. And this was just my way. I don't suggest that it's for everybody. But it was this. It was chase nothing. From that moment forward, I didn't initiate a single phone call or meaningful conversation except for with my parents and my children. I returned phone calls. I responded when people approached me. It was fairly intense. So I chased nothing. I ran from nothing. Whatever came from me, I saw if I ran from it, it was just going to chase me more aggressively. So I turned to face everything. Very difficult. And I saw the habit also of kind of ducking down, like an ostrich maybe, hiding. Trying to exist in the shadows so nobody would notice. And I stopped doing that also. What this meant was I had to be as I am in every single moment. It meant that by not chasing anything, not running from anything, and not hiding, I had to receive what comes. So you receive what comes, and what comes goes. This is the way. And I release what goes. The advanced practice maybe will remember to come back to this. When you release what goes, let it take the you that is attached to it with it. Then I became very aware of the things I was saying and the things that other people said around me and to me. It was very clear that somewhere in the range of 90% of the things people said were sort of a self-promotion of their identity. Please think of me this way. And it didn't matter whether they were talking about the weather, somebody else, or some experience they had in their childhood. It was all some version of self-promotion or self-defense. And so it became clear that if I'm going to be free of this identity, then I couldn't give it to my tongue. Promote nothing of myself and defend nothing of myself. Say what you will about me, I have no defense. What I realized in this posture is that in stillness, the world, my karma, and my dharma will come to me in its own time. I saw something very interesting because soon after this, maybe 9 months after this, I moved to Satchidananda Ashram Yogaville. And nobody knew me here for the most part. And so people would be drawn in, and some people would be repelled. And some people would be curious, and they'd come and go. And I just watched, and it became kind of amazing that my karma was attracting what belonged to me, and my karma was repelling what didn't belong to me. And if I chased something that didn't belong to me, I would be exhausted. And if I got it, it would fight me and finally go anyway. So why bother? And if it was meant for me, no matter how I ran, how far I ran away, it would find me. So why bother? I'm too tired and too old and too lazy to fight my karma. And same thing with dharma. My little secret is that probably 8 or 9 years ago, I would be doing this. And I couldn't understand why it wasn't already happening. Now I know. Now I know why. I would have made a big mess of it. There's enough risk of that as there is. I wasn't ready. So the point is that in this surrender, what comes will come for you. What goes will go. It won't matter. And it happens in its own time. You can't speed it up and you can't slow it down. But your surrender into this actually has a quickening effect, and it makes it so much easier. Other than what's difficult is releasing the habit of chasing and running, of promoting and defending. This is the difficult part. And the stillness is boredom. But that same stillness that is boredom will be the stillness that is peace. And the same stillness that seems lazy is the stillness that will attract everything that belongs to you. There are two stories come to mind, Johnny. One is Yogananda. And Yogananda at one point came to see where he was, and he said, "Lord, please bring me my people." And they came. And Eckhart Tolle was still in England before he moved to Vancouver. And in a similar point of recognition, he said, "Okay, I'm ready." And then things sped up, as he says, considerably, more than he might have wanted. Ranjani Ma, maybe you can look up the quote for me by Ramana Maharshi so that we know. Ranjani Ma and I were in Tiruvannamalai at the ashram where he gave this teaching to his mother, weren't we? It was more of a temple, wasn't it? It wasn't an ashram. And so Ramana Maharshi says something just like this. Much more succinct, of course. What belongs to you will find you. What doesn't belong to you, no matter how hard you chase it, you will not be able to keep it. And the timing also does not belong to you. It's hard enough when to not chase the thing that we want, to not run for the thing that we'd rather avoid, to let time dissolve our impatience, our urgency. Rarely ever in a moment do we really understand what's happening. Sometimes in reflection, we get a sense. So you don't have to make any sweeping changes. It's kind of dangerous, actually. It can be perilous to claim a new spiritual identity and now have something that you've got to do to prove to yourself and to others. You know? If you have money, it's a blessing. Spend it with your heart. If you have a job, it's a blessing. Serve, love and serve. Do a really good job. I was talking to Andrew today about Bhajan Kutir and some of the things we're looking at. And I said, since the very beginning, I've said to myself, if I'm going to bother to do this, what I'm doing now, I want to do it really well. To do it really, really well. Did you find it, Ranjani?
I found some explanations of it. What belongs to you will find you, Maharishi said. And he also said, know thyself and all else will be known to thee of its own accord. So that was part of the what belongs to you will find you.
That is a beautiful Upanishadic saying, which is, I want only to know the one thing by which all other things are known, or all things are known. Did you find it? Okay. So, so when I was engaged in a similar sort of debate, when what I realized through my own experience was that what had belonged to me, that was mine, when it fell away, to let it go. Because it wasn't until that letting go that the newness could come. We cannot cling to yesterday and be in the present. We cannot be leaning into future and be present. And this is across the board. This is across the board. Any kind of review of how to do it better next time. As much as we want to shake off the mundane, usually when it goes of its own accord, there will be grief. And you may cling to the very thing that you thought you wanted to be free of. This is normal. Even though we so much want to be free of the habits of the ego, that when it falls away, somehow there's this tremendous grief because we identified as that. And so a piece of us actually dies. A piece of the identity dies and there's grief. More than once I wrote a eulogy. And there was both a sense of sorrow, a reverence and an honoring of an iteration of me or I as an expression, and just honoring that, what it was, some relief of being free of it, and some grief at that aspect of me dying. Yeah. The seed of the practice, which is to love and serve, is the fruit of the practice. Whatever you're doing, engage like that. By engaging like that in everything you're doing, you will reveal to yourself the aspects of you that are looking to be forgiven and freed, let's say. And then when that falls away, there will be some grief, maybe even some wondering, what now? And then something new will come in. Everything begins to clarify, like, oh, kind of makes sense a little bit more now. Yeah. Okay. It's the hardest thing in the world. I remember having this kind of a comical revelation that, in the amusement park, the children's section where they usually have like some race cars on a track and they go at their own speed around the track, like this. And the steering wheel just spins and spins and spins, and the gas and the brake, and they don't really do anything. But kids are so busy driving their cars and speeding up and slowing down. It's a bit like this. What belongs to you will come for you in the perfect time. And what's meant to fall away will fall away in the perfect time. When we surrender into this, when we occupy a posture of total radical acceptance of what is, now things will speed up for you.
Just to reflect, thank you. That's really, really profound. And I think the two things that I realized as you were talking was, one is the sort of ego duality that was being created in my mind was sort of, it's like, well, either I kind of force, it was like about forcing a decision to move towards a spiritual or more spiritual path. But actually, I think what's sort of becoming clear for me through that is that if I were to do that from a place of non-acceptance of sort of the present, it would be basically a kind of egoic push into a sort of spiritual path, which in and of itself is not the thing. So that's been really helpful. And then the other thing that I'm just reflecting on and kind of trying to chuckle a bit at myself about is I can feel that through this conversation, I can feel like the very core of my egoic identity getting all triggered, because it's like,
Welcome to Satsang.
It's like the very conflict seems to, like, if you take it all the way down, it basically seems to stem from like, well, God doesn't exist and doesn't have control over my life, and I am God, and ultimately I am the only person that can, and I can't trust anyone else. And it's like this deep narcissistic core that seems to be animating all of this. So those two things kind of came out. Thank you.
Wonderful, Johnny. You know, don't be afraid of that. You will. It's going to happen, and the divine world has a way of beating it out of you. Any narcissistic tendency that arises out of your relationship with God, it shows up so that you can see the tendency, and you'll be freed of it, often painfully. You know, and it's so beautiful too. In fact, I was talking to Krishna Priya today about this, is that there's this really persistent sense that in order to be spiritual, we need to become something different. There's a list of improvements that we need to make in order to now be ready to be spiritual. It's so funny. What did we say? Well, first we started with one of my favorites, which is a guru is sitting with his disciple, and they're on a hill under a tree in nature. And she says, "Guru?" He says, "Yes. From where do I enter the Tao?" Guru says, "Can you hear the faint stream in the distance?" She really has to listen. Yes, I can. I hear it now. Enter from there. Perfect. 40 minutes later, Guru? Yes. What if I said I couldn't hear it? Then I would have said, enter from there. The release is in the total surrender. Wherever it is that you are, as whatever it is that you are, and that whatever it is that you think you are, it is from here. It is not 3 steps ahead of you or 2 steps behind you. You don't need to become anything different in order to qualify. And every instruction that Scripture and Guru will give you is to lead you to a point of total frustration, to realize for your own self, you've heard it said, the truth is closer to you than your own nose. There's nothing to become, nowhere to go, nothing to achieve. You see, we could say it this way. You are in a labyrinth of your own mind, navigating as a subject that has your name, in this labyrinth of mind you call world. There is no exit. I was telling Krishna Priya, there's Jean-Paul Sartre created a play, wrote a play called No Exit, Huis clos. In this labyrinth of mind, there is no exit. And it's no problem. Search every crevice and corner. With mind as your tool, you will never escape the clutches of mind, of Maya, of world. And wherever you surrender is now, this is the center of the labyrinth that you've been looking for. And this is the exitless exit, the gateless gate. It's where you finally give up on all of your strategies for self-improvement, for world improvement, and you simply surrender as you are and to what it is. It is completely without strategy. And anywhere that your mind will lead you as some solution to free yourself of mind, have you picked it up yet? Anywhere your mind will lead you to free yourself from mind is wherever you are, be still, keep quiet. Doesn't mean don't say pass the salt and do a pantomime at the ashram because you're in silence. Means be still and be quiet here. Here. Huh? the mind will have you doing so much. And it's good. Huh? As long as you will listen, at least just pay attention. You must know whether your thoughts, your strategies, your opinions, your beliefs, you must know if they're trustworthy or not. So, listen, do. Continue to follow the thoughts. And then make an assessment. How is it working? So it's just this incredible, unfathomable truth, which is that the exit is wherever you stop searching for the exit. The labyrinth solves wherever it is you sit. When mind falls away, knowingness begins. It's the very beginning, the dawn of knowing. It has nothing to do with teaching and learning. It has nothing to do with learning, memorizing, and regurgitating. This is good for the world and for the mind. Let it be as it is. But you must know something else. In order for you to know mind, you must observe from not mind. Remember this. Whenever mind develops a strategy to free you from mind, what is of the mind will return you to mind. It's always a boomerang. Always. And then the thoughts that ruled us through fear, that dominated, enslaved us through fear, these same thoughts, this same mind now becomes yours. Now, no longer from a posture of fear and desire, but from a posture of love and serve. The same mind, the same sharp intellect, more clarity, more focus, more alert and alive. But to know this, there is, be still, and keep quiet. Of course, in meditation, but I mean in everything that you do. If you're making a presentation at work, first come to the place of quiet stillness. Speak from there. You'll be amazed at how successful your career will become. Or maybe even more lucky, you'll finally be fired and the debate will, you won't be debating about whether or not you should quit. Yeah, Johnny's been teetering on the edge for a while, and I think that's the end of it. Well, I wish you a good severance so you can come travel to India or whatever. How are we on time? I was, 5 minutes? Oh, 25, good. I was telling Andrew today, I went onto the YouTube channel where a lot of this gets posted and doing shorts and whatnot. And sometimes we have people join here from there, which is kind of fun that that's happening. And I saw one comment on one of the shorts and it said one word, it said gibberish. And I laughed so hard. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe it's just not from where he's looking. So I actually watched the short, total gibberish. It made no sense whatsoever. He was absolutely right. It is so confounding. You know, the habits of the solution to our predicament are the predicament itself. Hmm? The habits, the strategies for the solution of our predicament, these are the predicament themselves. To come to know this honestly usually is by a lot of effort, a lot of sadhana, a lot of meditation, a lot of sitting through a lot of discomfort with the body, karma yoga, just being abused and taken advantage of, all of it. Mm-hmm. Trying to be the best karma yogi or, you know, whatever. Do this in earnest with all your might, that you might see more quickly. There's this great quote, I think it might be Zen, I don't know. It says, if you haven't started seeking, don't start. If you've started seeking, don't stop. The yogis say that anyone that makes it to satsang is so blessed and has done so much sadhana in their past lives that even coming to hear the word satsang is a blessing. You know, my very first satsang ever, I walked out the back offended. Thought it was a cult. Okay. Who has something more?
Nataraj. I have along the lines of this discussion, I have a quote that I wanted to share from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. I read this in Prior to Consciousness, which is a transcribing of his talks with his students, and it hit me so profoundly that I stopped and wrote it down and put it above my altar. And for a while, I would read it before meditating, and it says, "The ultimate point of view is that there is nothing to understand. So when we try to understand, we are only indulging in acrobatics of the mind. Whatever spiritual things you aspire to know are all happening in this objective world, in the illusion. All your activities, material and spiritual, are in this illusion. All this is happening in the objective world. All is dishonesty. There is no truth in this fraud."
In this fraud.
In this fraud.
I love him so much. and it's not a problem. Yeah. Beautiful. Would you post that to the Sangha group, please? Thank you. There's Nisargadatta is, wow, so good. There's another one that actually is so succinct, so precise and beautiful, and it's J. Krishnamurti, Freedom from the Known. Maybe it's 100 pages, 150 pages. Every sentence is packed. Nisargadatta, I am that. J. Krishnamurti, Freedom from the Known. What was this one, Gyana?
Prior to consciousness.
Prior to consciousness. You know, a contemplation on the title alone will bring you prior to consciousness. What precedes this isn't an inquiry as to whether anything precedes it. It's to go looking, you know? What precedes world? What precedes sound and color and form? What does Jesus mean? Before Abraham was, I am. I'm sure it means so many things to so many people. What precedes one? Oneness. If there's one, means zero. Do you see? There cannot be one without zero. Do you see? What would it mean? But you see, this zero is not a juxtaposition against one. And this one is not a juxtaposition against zero. Contrasting, but also not contrasting. Non-different. Precedes zero and one. Precedes the concept of zero. Precedes the concept of one. Do you see? And truly, if you see zero and you see one, then you see. All things, the 10,000, the 8 billion things proceed from this. This 0 and 1 is already 2. Hmm? Have you become aware of what they call Fibonacci sequence? No, I don't want to be clever here. Huh? But if you see 0 and 1 is 2, Fibonacci adds another 1 is 3. 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, like this. And it happens in a Planck second, let's say. So fast, cannot see it. Mind is so fast, speed of light. But as fast as mind is, as fast as light is, you are timeless. Does this seem too technical, too esoteric? No? You've heard it, I've heard it. Many great, genius physicists, they can have an incredible romance with the divine. Many of them have said they see God in the numbers, in the formulas. I don't know, but this is what I've heard. The beautiful thing too is we don't really even need to understand these things. Nothing really to figure out. There's something in these reflections, these inquiries, that seeds are planted that you won't even notice, and all of a sudden, go figure. And you may not even remember in that moment when the seed was planted. Also, another benefit too, which is that the more absurd, the more it shakes the mind free of thinking it knows. The more we can disrupt the patterns of thinking, the more that we can gently disrupt our patterns of opinion and belief, certainty of I'm right. This is good progress. Gibberish has its great benefit.
Hello. Hi, Nataraj. And hi to everyone also. It's always really nice to meet with you guys here. I so I don't know if we have time for one last question. It has to do with, yeah. So it has to do with the, because there has been, like, from time to time there is a, it's mostly the way you relate the all of this wisdom is mostly through personal experience. This is how I feel it. And still, sometimes there is mention of God. Mostly, I don't want to say mostly, but I will, mostly in an abstract sense. But still, sometimes you do speak about, for example, Jesus. Or I don't know if you ever speak about Krishna, I don't know. But this is the question. In your personal process, what role has it played, if any, in some form of another of a personal divinity? And I mean, if it hasn't, so let's say it hasn't. I mean, I don't know, you'll tell us, but if it hasn't, would you say that it could have been it could have been beneficial, very beneficial at all? Because in the context of bhakti yoga and stuff, which is the one that I'm sort of around these days, the value of a personal God it's really central. It really is the cornerstone of the practice because it's devotional. So this is the way they managed to make it happen. But I was wondering, in your experience, how yes, thank you.
So, yes, it's very personal. So, our habit is to be mesmerized by the objects of the world. And so, in this, even if we have an understanding that God is everywhere, in everything, all the time, even if we have this certainty of faith, still the habits of mind are to attuned toward objects, to concepts, and to physical objects. So thought objects, physical objects. It can be helpful to have Jesus on the cross in your church, to see something to take the eyes toward, to lead you through the object to the divinity which is unseen. It can also be helpful to have a single focus. They say, if you want to reach water, you don't dig 100 shallow holes. You choose one spot and you dig deep. This is true. It also can be helpful in the opposite to explore honest relationship with different aspects of divinity. If you've come to this certainty that God is everywhere in everything, has many names and many forms, then also there is no harm in engaging in divine relationship with different. Many people don't realize that Hinduism itself is monotheistic. And just like in every religion and every tradition, there are ones who will argue who is primary, Shiva or Krishna, Saraswati or Kali. And that's fine also. And truly, each individual soul has its own perfect path. We can share paths, but each one in that is very specific. The peril in being fickle is that you won't make much progress. The peril in aligning is that you will be susceptible to dogma and somebody else's ideation of God. What to do? You know? And the fickle never say I'm fickle, and the dogmatic never say I'm dogmatic. You know what they have in common? They both say I'm right. So you find the proper balance for you that is always going to be moving, because what flanks you on your left and what flanks you on your right, these things are also moving. And so this center path, this middle, the way through is also supple and moving. I always had a sense, for me, it's just for me, that all of these distinctions are beautiful and tell me so much about God and about me. So much, so beautiful. The diversity of divinity is magnificent and also completely absurd. I have no energy for debate. It seems foolish to me. If you go to Chidambaram in Tamil Nadu, to the Nataraj temple there, it is the center of the universe for the Shaivites. And I sat there and I meditated, and they're not wrong. But just from a place of looking and a place of perceiving. What little I've read and heard of Srimad Bhagavatam, absolutely the gospel truth. And Shiva is the greatest devotee to Lord Krishna. You see, the thing is, from here, for me, and I may be a fool and totally misguided, but from here, there's no energy for debate. The more I came to know Shiva and Kali and Krishna and Ganesha and Buddha, the more I came to know Jesus. The more I understand Jesus, the more I know Krishna and Shiva. You see, here, maybe one day I'm going to put your picture there, because this also would be perfectly sufficient in my view. You've heard me hint at it before, truly. When I look out there and see you, I see God and Guru. And this is not some kind of a spiritual acrobatics. The questions you ask, the reflections you have, I see myself in it all the time. And past this needing to get it right, needing to be right, needing to tell you I'm right and you're wrong. Leave it to the world. They've always done this. And let them tell you, and don't argue back, because they're right where they're looking from. They're exactly right from where they're looking. And the reason they're telling you is because they love you. And they found some happiness or some certainty, some refuge in it, and they want to share it with you. So you just thank you. But you must be true to yourself. Some will say that non-dualism is perilous. Some will say yoga is satanic. Some will say Jesus never existed. Some will say Krishna is a blue boy with a flute. What? But when you're the flute and you're being played, then you know what is Krishna. And there is no debate in it. You see, but truly, Daniel, like in this, I have no desire to promote anything. And no energy for debate, let alone defend. I think I feel so blessed to look from where I see. And I don't see that the distinctions are anything more than a myriad of something so beautiful. The world has so many things to say, so many things to try and convince you. And you must know for yourself. There's no other way. Truly, who would try to convince you that wasn't uncertain, that they would need to convince you in order to affirm their own sense of uncertainty, well, anyway. You know, my Muji was always saying, empty, empty. Where does this I'm right sense come from? From where does your opinions, where's the seed of opinion? Where does it come from? How did you come to your beliefs? The building blocks of preference and opinion and belief is thought. And nobody knows thought who doesn't know not thought. It's not possible. And so nobody knows thought but has so much to say. Nobody knows thought and has so much to promote. If you can become free of this, then you can know thought. Where it comes from, how it arises. So dramatic. Okay. Thank you. Immense love. It was so fun. I got so animated, huh? Uh, Love you, love you.